So my name is Jennifer Day. I'm running for re-election here as the House Representative for District 48. I replaced Dr. David Benson, who won in 2018, and he moved out of district in May. So I had been working on his campaign, and as an activist and supporter here in Johnson County for the last several years, the Democratic Party asked if I would be willing to step up and run for the position. And I decided that that was something I was willing to work on doing. So here I am, running for re-election, never having imagined myself as a politician or running for election at any time in the future. I've always been a support person more than anything else. So, but I'm willing to do the work, and I think that that's where the vision came in. Very excited for the support that I have from the party, as well as from my neighbors and the community at large. So looking forward to continuing to represent them in 2021 and beyond in Topeka. And thank you again for giving us this opportunity. I look forward to answering your questions as we go on.
Thank you, Ms. Day. Now let me turn to Mr. Frederick for his opening statement.
Thank you to the Overland Park Chamber and the Public Policy Council for hosting this forum today. My name is Terry Frederick. I'm the Republican candidate to be your state representative in Topeka. First, a little background about myself. My family moved to Johnson County when I was in 5th grade, and I've lived here since, except for my college years when I attended the University of Kansas. I was born in Atchison, Kansas, and I've been a lifelong Kansan with Kansas values. I'm a product of the Shawnee Mission School District. My wife Karen and I have been married for 32 years. Our 3 sons, all Eagle Scouts, are currently attending college, with 2 at KU and my youngest at K-State. I previously served as an elected board member of Water 1 of Johnson County for nearly 24 years. I served 3 terms as chairman of the Water 1 board. My service on the board gave me a better understanding of the importance of local control of government, which will help guide my decision as your representative. I've been a longtime volunteer with Boy Scouts, the Lions Club, my church, the Church of the Ascension, and many other organizations in Johnson County. Giving back to the community has always been an important part of my life. I'm a certified public accountant and small business owner. For the last 4 years, I have assisted businesses around the country to properly comply with complex tax laws. Prior to that, I worked at Sprint for 26 years, directing their corporate state and local tax group. This experience gives me a very strong understanding of tax policy and how it impacts both businesses and individuals. COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on our community. First and foremost, we must work hard as leaders to protect our residents. We must also find a way to restart the economy and get people back to work safely. Schools in Johnson County are also very important to me. As I mentioned, I'm a product of the Johnson County Public Schools and understand the importance of quality schools to provide the best classroom experience to prepare our children and grandchildren for the future. There are many other important issues for the legislature in the coming session, including healthcare costs, which will come up in the questions, so I will wait to respond to these issues. Thanks again to the Chamber for hosting the forum. I would appreciate the opportunity to serve as the district state representative for House 48.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. We'll now proceed to our question and answer, and in accordance with the predetermined order, the first question will be directed to Mr. Frederick, and that question is, as a candidate, what are your top 3 policy issues?
The first one I mentioned in my opening comments, getting the economy going again. We've got to find a way to safely do it, and we've got to help businesses reopen, get customers back into their businesses. Driving the economy will help the state, and it drives revenue for the state, which pays for schools and Medicaid and all the other important services that the state provides. So we've got to get the economy going. We've got to do it safely. So we've got to look at common sense policies and regulations to help them do that. We've also got to make sure that if something like COVID-19 happens in the future, we're prepared for it and determine a way to respond to it where we don't shut down the entire economy if it happened again. Schools are another important issue. With 3 boys going through schools, I know how important it is to make sure that they're prepared for their futures. Finally, healthcare costs. I'm sure there'll be another question about healthcare costs, so I can get into that in more detail. But we've got to find a way to find affordable healthcare for our residents. As a small business owner, I know how expensive healthcare can be, and we've got to find a solution to make it affordable so everyone can have it.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. The question to Ms. Day is, as a candidate, what are your top 3 policy issues?
Well, number 1 is going to be for me Medicaid expansion. We've already delayed it for far too long. It should have been passed in 2017, and here we are with a crisis like COVID-19, showing how very important it is to make sure that all of Kansans are taken care of, as well as the hospitals are well funded to be able to handle what's happening. So that's number 1 for me. Number 2 is, of course, carrying on and making sure that our public schools are well funded and have the ability to pay their teachers well, while dealing with everything, including COVID-19 situations, and that our students have the opportunity to learn in the best environment possible. I feel like Kansas schools have always had a long history, especially Johnson County schools, of top-notch ability and level. Terry has mentioned, his children have all gone there. I don't have children, but of course, a well-educated populace is important to all of us. And so that's something that's a priority for me. And thirdly, of course, making sure that our budget is balanced. So I agree with Governor Kelly and making sure that we have a well-balanced budget and the proper revenue streams to be able to do that with. So taxation is going to be a focus for me.
Ms. Day, the next question will be addressed to you first, and it follows up on a comment that you just made about balancing the state budget. How would you propose to balance the state budget, and what specific budget cuts would you support, or what revenue enhancements would you consider, if any?
Well, of course, we need to, the basics are we need to ensure that our expenditures don't exceed our revenues. I really like that Governor Kelly has the plan in mind to have a positive ending balance with her fiscal years, and however we can work to do that. Now, of course, with the economy being in the situation that it's in right now, we have more challenges than we had anticipated probably going into 2021. But I think that we've got the right leadership in mind and at hand to be able to get us through. So I think that some government spending probably needs to be looked at and limited so that we can focus on the revenue enhancements in places like human services and public safety. Of course, again, the situation that we're in currently shows just how very important those kinds of spending plans are at this point in time for Kansas, and making sure that we're all taken care of moving forward.
Mr. Frederick, the question is, how would you propose to balance the state budget? What specific budget cuts would you support, and what revenue enhancements would you consider, if any?
And the best way to balance the budget is to get the revenue stream back by getting businesses back open and people back in the stores. So that's one of the first things we have to focus on. And if we can get revenue streams back up to pre-COVID-19 levels as quickly as possible, that will reduce the deficit. Right now, the deficit is forecast between $1.4 and $1.5 billion. That's a huge deficit to cover. And the best way to take care of that is to get revenues flowing again to reduce that deficit. And we'll also have to look at other programs within the state. I mean, each program will need to be reviewed individually to identify which ones can manage short-term cuts if necessary to minimize the impact on Kansas residents. And we've got to make sure that the state still provides the services that are needed for our residents. But it's going to be a challenging year, I mean, for whoever wins the seat, I mean, because with a $1.4 billion deficit, I mean, it's not business as usual for how we proceed for the coming session.
Mr. Frederick, the next question goes to you first. And the question is, what would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
I mean, it starts with K-12 education, and getting our students prepared to get into the workforce is very important. I mean, learning, reading, writing, and math is important, but also learning other skills. I think the schools are starting to get into that. Supporting higher education, whether it be a university or VOTEC or apprentice programs, is also very important to get people trained and ready to go into the workforce. Creating an environment to keep our youth in Kansas once they get out of school is very important. And finally, the state has a couple programs, the KIT and KER programs, the Kansas Industrial Training and Kansas Industrial Retraining programs, which are available to help companies with their existing employees and new employees to get them trained. And as we move forward with this economy, I think a lot of jobs are going to change, and we need to help prepare the companies and their employees for those changes.
Ms. Day, what would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
Well, as we know, many jobs require some form of higher level of education. So beyond high school, and whether that's coming from traditional higher education like a 2 or 4 year college or apprenticeship programs, whatever the state can do to help promote the development and the stability of those programs and our awesome colleges that we have, that's going to be imperative to making sure that that our workforce is prepared. We need to also evaluate the current workforce systems that we have in place that promote on-the-job education and training that ensure that they're promoting growth, so that companies can continue to have a well-educated workforce, but also demand or have a demand for encouraging folks to want to work there. That's an important, and to retain that talent. So I think those are the main keys to developing and growing our state's workforce.
Ms. Day, the next question goes to you first. Johnson County obviously has had a long history of tremendous support for public education, but public education funding has been at the forefront of issues before the state legislature for a long time. What are your views on K-12 public funding?
Well, we have to make sure that our public schools are prioritized when it comes to funding. So like I was mentioning about a well-educated workforce, it's imperative in the development of social skills and innovative ideas and socioeconomic strength for the children of Kansas to have awesome schools and to have, and that requires good funding. So we need to spend more per student than we have been doing the past years. And I think that we need to adhere to the decision set forth by the Kansas Supreme Court in 2019. I would like to go above and beyond what their adequate spending limits were set at. So if we can find a way to do that through a fair taxation model, that would certainly be key. And of course, I know that's going to be tight going into the next couple of years here because of the recovery that's going to be happening from COVID-19. But if we can get our testing and tracking and all of that in place when it comes to COVID, and folks are paying attention to what science and facts are telling us, I think we can get back on track here pretty quickly if we just all keep that in mind.
Mr. Frederick, what are your views on K-12 public education funding?
As I'd mentioned earlier, public education is very important, and the proper funding of it is, you have to do that to make the public schools work. The courts decided what adequate funding was. The legislature has funded that. We need to continue to look at how to best spend those funds. In the future, if additional funds are available, that's something we can look at. I think the next couple of years are going to be very much of a challenge, with the budget deficits and the impact on the economy. Early on in my campaign, I met with Dr. Merrigan, the superintendent of Blue Valley Schools, to talk about schools and funding, and got her perspective for what was important. And local control obviously is one of the important things for the school district, and that's something as a legislature we have to make sure that our local school boards have the control they need to run their schools. And I think a lot of that was shown in their ability to decide school district by school district how to open up after COVID-19. But adequately funding the schools is very important and is one of my top priorities.
Mr. Frederick, the next question goes to you. What type of economic development policies will you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
In my prior experience at Sprint, involved in state and local taxes, I spent a lot of time working on economic development issues. I was involved in the Sprint campus when it was originally built, working with the state on the economic development incentives that were available then. It's very important that companies to have available to help make their decisions as they're trying to decide where to locate. And that being said, the incentives have to make sense. There has to be a decision that the company needs them to make the decision to locate in the jurisdiction, whether it's Overland Park or someplace else in Johnson County. There also should be a back end look at making sure that the incentives did what they were supposed to do and delivered the investment in the employees that were promised as part of the economic development package.
Ms. Day, the question goes to you. What types of economic development policies will you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
Well, primarily, I think that if we can show that Kansas is a state that's willing to support equality and having a lot of focus on that across the board, will draw both companies as well as a great workforce who wants to work and stay in Kansas to make it a better state than it is even now. So primarily, though, we need to promote the development of workforce programs and invest in community goods like transportation, telecommunications, of course. I also worked at Sprint for several years in the network department, so I can understand how important things like the development of broadband is across the state, which we'd been working on since I was there until 2013. So the fact that we're still working on it now goes to show how difficult of a program it is to get in place, but we're gonna keep working at it. And then also, of course, the K through 12 and higher education. We just have to make sure that policies are in place to support the development and growth of those so that we don't lose track of what it is that makes Kansas an attractive place to build a business, to maintain a business, and to get a great workforce from.
Ms. Day, the next question is directed to you. What are your views on state tax policies, being as specific as you can?
Well, I feel like one of the first things that led me to being as active as I am in the local politics here in Johnson County and Overland Park specifically was the Brown-back tax experiment that was such a failure and knocked things so far out of balance. I opened my own small business in 2013, my husband and I, in real estate investment when I left Sprint and decided to try to work on that entrepreneurship thing. That tax experiment put our state into a disadvantaged position when it comes to recovering from the deficits in an efficient manner. And here we are just a couple of years outside of that and running into a really big issue like COVID-19 that's knocked us back again several steps. So, but I trust in what Governor Kelly's plan is for recovery. I'm in favor of, like I said, fair taxation based on income level and a reduction of food sales tax as soon as possible. I think that there are ways around that would help a lot. So those are my more specific levels that I'd like to focus on.
Mr. Frederick, what are your views on state tax policies, being as specific as you can?
Having spent my entire career dealing with state tax policy across the country, I understand the importance of the tax revenues that are generated by it. That being said, we have to keep taxes as low as we can while providing the services that we need to provide for our residents. There's three major components of state taxes: sales tax, property tax, and income tax. All three are important to, they call it the three legs of the stool to fund our state and our local communities. So we have to look at all of those and make sure that they're doing what they should be doing, but also watching out for our residents that are on fixed incomes to make sure that we're not pricing them out of homes or creating other issues. And it's a very challenging issue and something that I think my background will help as we move forward in the legislature if I'm successful.
Mr. Frederick, the next question goes to you first. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
As a small business owner, I understand healthcare continues to be a problem for individuals and businesses due to high premiums, high deductibles, and sometimes very poor coverage. We have to pursue ideas that give Kansans access to quality healthcare at an affordable rate. One of the options is Medicaid expansion. As this is reviewed as an option, we must make sure that we're not doing anything that will negatively impact our most vulnerable that are already covered by CanCare. We also need to make sure that we're not impacting the outcomes that they have for those that already have coverage or that would be in the expansion. One of the things that is commonly not discussed with healthcare or with Medicaid expansion is that almost 45% of those that would be included in Medicaid expansion already have insurance. So they would be moving to Medicaid expansion. So the numbers that we're talking about with Medicaid expansion aren't nearly as large as sometimes are thrown out. But for those that do not have coverage, it's very important to help find a solution for them. There's a lot of different things that we can look at, including Medicaid expansion, association plans, and ways to drive down healthcare costs like telehealth and other ways to reduce the healthcare costs for all of our residents.
Ms. Day, the same question to you. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
I too, as a small business owner, I have an individual health plan that does not offer a lot of coverage and can be pulled out from under us at any moment. So I feel this question on a pretty deep level, and I would like for us to find a way to have more affordable and accessible healthcare for everybody up and down the road. But we have to make sure that that's being done without taking away the coverage for pre-existing conditions and making sure that it's not impacting people because of what age they are or whether they have a job or not. So as far as Medicaid expansion goes, I've already mentioned I'm in full support of Medicaid expansion. Think it should have been done back in 2017 when it was vetoed by then Governor Brownback. We have lost billions of dollars. We send them out of state to other states and fund their Medicaid expansion programs as opposed to keeping it here in Kansas. Those are our tax dollars that we are sending to the state that are being sent away. So we need to make sure we use those to expand the program. We can put almost 150,000 Kansans. I'd be interested in hearing more about what Terry was mentioning about there being 45% people that are already covered. I have not heard that number. Many rural hospitals are in peril due to the inability to pass appropriate legislation. So I think it's time. And also, as I understand it, it would bring $58 million alone to Johnson County specifically each year if we could go ahead and pass that, just in the development of making sure that we've got folks covered for their medical conditions here with the improvement of, addition of doctors, nurses. It's a boon all around.
The next question is directed to Ms. Day first. What do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
Well, primarily, I think it's that I am not a politician. I haven't been a politician for many years. I'm like I said, I'm an activist turned politician because I felt that it was important for me to step up into this role. So that's the one part of it. But then the other part of it is that I believe in a multi-party system of democracy. Right now, we have what is a supermajority in our legislature, and in my opinion, it's been keeping things from getting done. So when you have a single party that has the majority power, they're not able to debate themselves, and so we wind up with a system that gets shut down, and we don't have new revenue stream ideas coming in. So I'm in favor of a multi-party system, making sure that we can work across the aisle with each other, not looking at one side as a team or as an opponent. We need to be able to work together on these issues. And that's the primary difference between the two of us, I think.
Mr. Frederick, what do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
As a former board member of Water One, I have a good understanding of local government and the importance of local control for local government. I understand tax policy. I've spent my career on tax policy, so I understand how it impacts our residents and our companies and what might help the state and what might harm the state and drive businesses away or individuals away. I've knocked on a lot of doors, and taxes are an issue that keeps coming up with regards to, especially with the older population, of being able to afford to stay in their houses. So that's something that we definitely need to look at. Finally, Ms. Day mentioned in the two-party system. I definitely agree we need to work together. But also, as a Republican, I am or would be in the majority, and that would make it much easier for me to get things done for our residents in the legislature, and being able to go to the leadership with a proposal would be much easier as a Republican versus a Democrat representing the district, because of the numbers and the ability to get something passed.
We're going to have one more question before we go to closings. Mr. Frederick, you will go first. And that question is, the pandemic has hit many Kansans and Kansas businesses very hard. What should be the role of the state legislature in dealing with this pandemic?
Common sense policies and regulations to help them deal with it, providing PPE necessary to the companies to get open back up. And we've got to focus on helping businesses reopen, get their employees back in their businesses safely, and get the customers back in. You can open up a business if you can't get the customers there to buy the goods or services. That doesn't help the business. So we've got to work to make the businesses and the customers get back into the stores or businesses. Looking forward, we need to make sure that the Kansas Emergency Management Plan is looked at. When we shut down businesses, we made definitions of essential and non-essential, which shut down businesses that could have operated safely. I think the distinguishing feature should be, can they operate safely or not safely? If they can operate safely, businesses should be allowed to remain open. If they can't, they should shut temporarily, and the state should help them find a way to operate safely. And if we can open up Hy-Vees and Walmarts and Home Depots, we should be able to find a way to open up most of our businesses in the state.
Ms. Day, final question to you. What should be the role of the state legislature in dealing with the pandemic?
Well, I think that we need to find a way to work together to make sure that the funding is available for small business loans and grants during times like this. When we receive that federal funding through the CARES Act and hopefully through the Future Heroes Act, being able to distribute that in a quick and efficient manner so that businesses that are maybe going through an okay period of time right now, but are looking at some tough months here ahead, and as winter comes upon us, that's going to be a big part of it. But I think we need to find a way to do, like I said, more testing and tracing, and whether that's happening through the legislature, I don't know. I think it's probably more of a health department situation that's deciding that, but I think that's going to be key to getting the economy back up and running, making sure that we know whether our levels of coronavirus are under control. So as Terry mentioned, being able to get back into those businesses. I spoke to a restaurant owner who is going through a rough time right now here in my district. And he's just concerned about, he's got a rooftop deck that's working out well for him right now, but he's lost all kinds of catering business. And he doesn't know what Q4 and Q1 are going to hold for him coming up because of winter. So, you know, that's a tough call, and being able to support those folks with the right funding is key.
We will wrap up today's forum with closing statements. Per the predetermined coin flip, Mr. Frederick will go first. Mr. Frederick, it's to you.
First, thanks again to the Overland Park Chamber for hosting the forum. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts and hear Ms. Day's comments also. We have covered a lot of topics today, and I think I've shown that I have a strong understanding of the issues and a background to be the state representative for House District 48. To the residents, if you have additional questions, you can find more information about me and reach out to me at terryfrederickforkansas.com. I appreciate all the feedback I'm getting from our constituents, and feel free to reach out to me. I would ask for your vote on November 3rd for state representative. I promise to work hard every day serving you and the rest of the district in Topeka. And thanks again for your consideration and your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. Ms. Day, your closing statement.
So as we've discussed throughout this, we have some very specific and clear concerns right now as a community as we deal with the coronavirus pandemic and its impact on everything from our livelihoods to school planning to health and public safety. So I'm strongly in support of measures that take scientific fact and advice into consideration, both as far as COVID-19 is concerned, but as well as in most cases. And I think that we need to, I look forward to helping our state in the way that it addresses issues like COVID-19 when they arise, so that we're better equipped to handle things like unemployment concerns and the health and safety of essential workers. But more specifically, I want to make sure that constituents in the district know that I'm available to hear from them, whether it's through email or on the phone, or hopefully in the near future, maybe even meeting up for a cup of coffee and a chat. I can't impact current needs if I don't know what those needs are, so I want to hear from you however it's best to do so. I also feel that I'm well suited to be your representative because of my experience as having worked for corporations in the past, but also being a small business owner now, and my deep interest in how what happens in Topeka is impacting us here locally in Overland Park and Johnson County as a whole. So I hope I can get your vote on November 3rd, and look forward to hearing from folks if they have any questions or concerns or needs. As your representative, that's something that's important to me.
Thank you to both of you for participating in today's program. I think it's very valuable for the voters of Overland Park to hear from you, and we really appreciate it. This concludes today's forum for Kansas House District 48, featuring Jennifer Day and Terry Frederick. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and remind you that today's forum has been recorded and will be posted on the Policy Council's website, www.votejoco.com. Advance voting by mail begins on October 14 and advance in-person voting on October 19 with Election Day on November 3rd. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.